Number 3. All right, maybe not porn. What about masturbation? Masturbation's good for you, isn't it? And you hear these sorts of things all the time. I've heard people say everything from it reduces the risk of prostate cancer to, cleans up the skin. Just eat prunes and use Clearasil, for goodness sake. But when somebody says masturbating is good for you, what they don't mean is the act of masturbation, that there's something in the act of it that is beneficial. It's like, well, you get the heart rate up. Well, you could probably do that another way, When people say masturbation is good for you, they almost always, if not always, mean that ejaculation is good for you, if they're talking to men, yeah? But so what? I mean, that's hardly controversial, especially if you're a Christian and you recognize that orgasm and ejaculation is a good thing, it has good side effects. But just because something's a good thing doesn't mean that the ends justify the means. I've never heard somebody say, well, when you ejaculate, that's good. That's why I'm having an affair. That's why I'm renting a hooker, right? Not many people would say things like that because I think many people recognize that these things are immoral. And I would like to say that the same thing's true about masturbation. Listen to what C.S. Lewis has to say about masturbation. Quote, "The real evil of masturbation is that it takes an appetite which, in lawful use, leads the individual out of himself to complete and correct his own personality and that of another, and finally in children and even grandchildren, and turns it back. Sends the man back into the prison of himself, there to keep a harem of imaginary brides. And this harem, once admitted, works against his ever getting out and really uniting with a real woman. For the harem," this is brilliant, this bit, "is always accessible, always subservient, calls for no sacrifices or adjustments, and can be endowed with erotic and psychological attractions which no woman can rival. Among those shadowy brides, he is always adored, always the perfect lover. No demand is made on his unselfishness, no mortification ever imposed on his vanity. In the end, they become merely the medium through which he increasingly adores himself. After all, almost the main work of life is to come out of ourselves, out of the little dark prison we are all born in. Masturbation is to be avoided, as all things are to be avoided which retard this process. The danger is that of coming to love the prison." Number 4, pornography is adult entertainment. Now look, 200 years ago in Great Britain, if you said, "I'm going to a gentleman's club," it was understood that you were going to an upper-class establishment to gossip with people of your class, play parlour games, drink whatever it is that English people drank 200 years ago. Right? But today, if you say, "I'm going to a gentleman's club," it's understood that you're going to a low-lit bar that smells like urinal cakes and hopelessness. There's a big difference, and yet we call this gentleman's club. Adult bookstores. You see this defensive advertising. There's a reason that these adult bookstores cover up their windows and offer back entrances, right? It's not because the clientele are misunderstood revolutionaries plotting the demise of a sexually repressed culture. It's far simpler than that, and this is it. It's because what they're doing is bloody wrong. And they know it's wrong, and they'd rather not have you knowing that they're there. I was speaking to a bloke here earlier today. I said, when you go to the airport, there's a reason you've never seen someone buy a porno from the top shelf of an airport thing. That was descriptive. The same thing with these adult bookstores. We cover up the windows, we offer back entrances. It seems to me that actions speak louder than words, even when those words are 5 foot high neon and constitute the phrase gentleman's club. Number 5. Well, those in the sex industry, be that porn or prostitution, what have you, are just well-rounded nymphomaniacs. I mean, they like sex, they're They're just enjoying themselves. Let them go. What's the problem? Well, the problem, I think, is that for the most part, this is absolutely false. I mean, I've worked with several women who have been in the sex industry, who were in the sex industry, and this is just never the case, that they just love this stuff. Listen to this quote from psychotherapist Dr. Mary Ann Layden, who herself is not a Christian. She says, once the pornography actresses are in the industry, they have high rates of substance abuse, typically alcohol and cocaine, depression, borderline personality disorder. The experience I find most common among the performers is that they have to be drunk, high, or disassociated in order to go to work. Their work environment is particularly toxic. The terrible work life of the pornography performer is often followed by an equally terrible home life. They have an increased risk of sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV, domestic violence, and have about 25% chance of making a marriage that lasts as long as 3 years. When I was living in Ireland, or as you say, Ireland, I was in Donegal, and we ran this rosary group once a week, and we had this young lady come to the group. We'll call her June. And those of you who have read my book have read her story. June was a good girl, beautiful girl, but she was a hurt girl. She was a broken girl, There was a lot of issues there. And once she left high school, she went to Great Britain, where she became a stripper. And I got in touch with June over Facebook, and I just said, hey, I hope you're doing really well. Miss you. And she said, I know why you're writing. It's because you've heard I'm a stripper, and if you're here to judge me, then whatever. I'm like seriously not here to judge you. I'm just genuinely interested in you, and I hope that you're well. And we began talking over Facebook. And I said, would you mind if I conducted a written interview with you so that people can know what it's like to do the sort of work you do? Now, keep in mind, this isn't a young woman who left stripping, came to Jesus, and was in that sense biased. This was a girl who was going to do her next gig Saturday night. I said to her, what's it like, honestly, stripping in front of strangers who care nothing for you? This is what she wrote, verbatim. It makes me feel sick. A lot of the time I try to imagine they're not there or something, but the biggest part of the job is making them feel special. Making them feel like they're unique and that you have a particular interest in them. Looking into their eyes is really important. I hate having to do that because I hate them all. I hate that it's these men who have brought this business into existence. I always have thoughts like, I hate you so much. Please die. I want to castrate you. Stop looking at me while I'm in front of them, smiling and staring into their eyes. I feel nothing but loathing. And I said, June, I'm going to go out on a limb here. You don't sound very happy. Why are you doing this? And she said, well, I have this debt I need to pay off, and I can't ask my parents for the money because they'll be curious. I said, well, don't you have things you can sell? She said, I've sold it all. I said, I'm sure, well, don't you make enough money doing the stripping that you could pay the debt and stop? And she said, honestly, I've got to be drunk doing this stuff just to get through a night. Sometimes I leave with less money than I came with. I said, June, if my wife and I paid the debt, would you quit stripping? And she said, I'm not that kind of girl. I said, listen, you're willing to take your clothes off for money. All I'm saying is, I'll give you money, you put them back on, And she said, right, okay, fine, I'll do it. I said, yeah, and you can pay us back by coming over and having dinner with us sometime. We miss you. And she said, okay. And I said, look, June, I love you, but I don't trust you. And I need to know that you've quit, all right? I need evidence of that, and then we'll send the check. She said, okay. She emailed me and said she quit, gave me the number of her boss. I called him up, and I remember him saying, I can't say, because I asked her real name. He said, I can't say if she's quit, but I can tell you that a lady who went by the name of June, I'm like, all of a sudden we're being bloody moral, right? I'm like, fine, just she's quit, good. Hung up, and I send the check, and I sent some, you know, paraphernalia from Jason and Christelina Everett, and a miraculous medal, stuff like that. And, you know, she quit. And a few weeks went by, and she came and visited us in Ireland, and she had dinner with us. And after dinner, I was sitting out the back with June, and we were having a smoke. And I thought to ask her, have you ever thought about going to confession? Because she was Catholic. But then I thought the last thing I want to do is preach to her. But then I thought, I'm not schizophrenic. But then I thought, to the other thought that I thought was that, I said, but if I don't ask her to go to confession, who in her life will? Good point. Yes, you're welcome. And so I just sort of mustered up the courage and I said, June, have you ever thought about going to confession? And she looked at me and she said, absolutely. Oh, that was a shock. She said, but I'm terrified. I said, oh, that's totally normal. I said, look, I don't know, nor should I like to know, anybody who really enjoyed going to confession. Good friend of mine, you may be aware of her, Judy McDonald, who does some kind of comedy work. She always jokes about her first confession and how terrifying that was. And I remember the incident as well. You know, your teacher was desperately trying to convince you that this was a normal thing, right? Okay, what we're going to do is go over there into the closet. It's not a closet. It's a confessional. And you're going to tell the man you don't know all the bad stuff you've done. Are you freaking kidding me? Righto. Judy McDonald said she would get in line and she was so scared that she would get there, she'd forget her sins and just make them up. I kicked the cat. I don't have a cat. If I had a cat, I'm pretty sure I'd want to kick it. Which turns out is a sin to make up sins. So she says, you know, confession was an all-day ordeal for me. But nevertheless, I said, look, it's completely natural that you would feel some hesitation. Nevertheless, it's a good thing. And despite how you may be feeling, you really have nothing to worry about. She said, okay. So we arranged for a good friend of ours, a priest friend, to come over to the house the following week. And that Monday night, June arrived first, and she was really scared, white, visibly afraid. And so she came into the kitchen, and I took off with the two ragamuffins, my kids. And my wife prayed for June. And Father arrived, and we let him into the living room. And then June went in, and she just sort of confessed this stuff. And it was probably no more than 5 minutes. And she came out skipping in my hallway. Not metaphoric, like actually skipping. Please stop the skipping, would you? No, I didn't say that. Just beautiful, beautiful. Listen, no matter what you've done, no matter what's happened to you, no matter what you did this morning, Jesus Christ apparently thinks that you were worth the death of his son. You. I know, I don't get it either. And you don't have to believe that. You're perfectly fine. Continue to live as if you're scum, that God can't possibly enjoy you like you. You can continue to live like that if you will. But in doing that, you're not living in accord with reality. So just give up and just submit to reality. He really, really likes you. You know?